My doctor says that I need to take my cast off when I do some things around the house, and I thought that I could take my cast off and shoot this video, but Welcome back, you beautiful nerds, to another edition of a video. That's right, on this little corner of the internet. I am so happy that y'all are here. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button so that the YouTube algorithm gods will look favorably on this lowly peasant of a creator. Now, it's no secret that I have a little skosh of a mental illness. I've talked about it a lot on this channel, and I honestly don't know if what I'm going to mention next is a part of that mental illness or not, but here it is. I listen to around 6 to 7 to 8 podcast episodes a day. So that's like a significant chunk of the day devoted to having podcasts in the background. It is one of my favorite forms of media. It is how I like to consume my content. If you're ever interested in what I'm listening to, I'm gonna go ahead and create a little Spotify playlist down below in the description box because it varies. But you know who else spends a lot of time listening to podcasts? Joe Rogan fans. You know why I'd wager that? The man is not only releasing multiple episodes of his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, a week, but each of these episodes average around 2 to 3 hours long. You can listen to 2 of his episodes and boom, there goes the workday. Now, according to my Spotify recommended for me algorithm, I would not like the Joe Rogan Experience, simply because Spotify has never suggested it to me, which I find interesting, but also not surprising. In fact, I didn't even know that the Joe Rogan Experience is its own genre on Spotify. I went over to Spotify, I typed in Joe, and an entire genre, not just his Joe Rogan Experience podcast, just an entire genre popped up. And I'm like, oh, holy fuck, I'm in for it now. I'm about to confuse all my algorithms. What? You know what else is a genre? News. Soul music, Latin music, that is a genre. So in the spirit of reaching outside my content bubble, this week I'm going to be diverting a lot of my listening hours to his neck of the woods. But before I do that, a disclaimer. I feel like I'm sitting down and having like a legal chat with you guys about my disclaimer. Listen. I'm not an idiot. I know as soon as I tag Joe Rogan in this video, I might attract some super fans to my space, which if you are a super fan and you're new to Devin But Better, hi, welcome, I'm Devin. I don't want any super fans feeling upset that I took a very biased approach to this review. So here's what I know about Joe Rogan and here's what I don't know. Number one, I've never watched Fear Factor, nor have I listened to any of Joe Rogan's comedy tracks. My first exposure to Joe Rogan was actually from this movie, and I found it when I was in college, when I was thinking about whether or not I should share with my parents that I'm a huge stoner. I was super impressed with Joe Rogan and that documentary. I thought he was knowledgeable. I thought he came across chill and cool. It kind of actually surprised me when I learned that he has this machismo alter ego. Do I know that there are people in my online circles who have this kind of experience with Joe Rogan? Of course. It's no secret that the Joe Rogan Experience has become kind of a dog whistle for the type of men that you may not want to date. Is that a fair correlation? Probably not. However, it does exist. Do I know that he recently had COVID and went public on all of his socials about taking ivermectin? Yes. I do know that because I don't live under a fucking rock. I am aware. Do I agree with this take? No, I don't. Get vaccinated. Even though I may have an instinct to write him off based off of this decision making, I'm consciously going against it. Personally, I'm curious about this whole Joe Rogan Experience. I'm a huge podcast aficionado, like I just said, and he's the biggest in the space. But here's the thing, I'm not gonna research him before I listen to his podcast episodes. I'm just gonna dive in with what I know. I am going into this experience semi-blind because I want to know why and how this man has such a chokehold on a certain demographic. Put your AirPods in, y'all, let's do this. All morning I had calls, Zoom calls, bum. And now I have about an hour and a half before I have to get back at it. This is a time in my day where I would usually catch up on my news podcasts. However, we have a challenge. Ooh, a challenge. Just going to listen to the first thing that appeals to me, and I'm gonna see how much I can tolerate, or if I like it, I don't know. Here goes nothing. Bro, One of the first episodes I clicked on was the one with Tom Segura. This fucking podcast is 3 hours and 44 minutes. Like, I listen to podcasts all day, but at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and listen to 3 hours and 44 minutes of two men talking. That's not the way. Who the fuck? I'm perturbed. I'm mad. The audacity. All the rest of the podcasters out here are putting a time limit to their shit because people gotta, I don't know, breathe, talk to their loved ones. I'm gonna listen to as much as I can, and then I'm gonna cut it off. If you want me to commit to 3 hours and 44 minutes of listening to you, all 3 hours and 44 minutes of that better be laced with unadulterated joy. I need to have like a hit of MDMA on these airwaves that are going into my brain. Jesus fucking Christ. I didn't even go to a college class that was that long. 3 hours and 40. Who the fuck do you think you are? On a scale of 1 to 10 on this episode, I'd give it a 6, 7. I think it was a great episode to start off my journey. You could tell that the two of them are friends. I stopped about an hour and 15 minutes in because I had enough at that point, but yeah, it wasn't bad. But here's the thing, my beautiful nerds. When it comes to the American political spectrum, I lean left. I don't know if that surprises you, but I am a progressive. And from what Joe says on his podcast, he's a progressive as well. However, I feel and I felt a little bit of cognitive dissonance with this first episode, especially in his conversation with Tom around Los Angeles, because he says that he's progressive, but all the things that he jokes about denote that he has opposing views. And that just makes me feel weird. If you say that you're progressive, then why are you whining about the fact that you can't make jokes about trans people anymore? But that's just me. And that, again, I admit, I'm a very progressive gal. I really don't understand the argument about how PC culture is ruining comedy. Because if you think about it, comedy evolves as humans evolve. What is considered socially and morally acceptable is changing as we get smarter. It is 9:14 in the morning. When you're producing, you have a huge portion of your budget going to COVID testing. Patrick just texted me saying that someone on his set came to set unvaxxed, but reassured them he was taking ivermectin. And Job, can I talk to you about the stress that it gives producers that someone's on set not only unvaxxed, but touting the fact that they took ivermectin? It just adds, did you see my face? I am so annoyed that this whole ivermectin bullshit is around, and someone I have to blame is Joe Rogan. I mean, again, I haven't gotten to this episode yet. I've only listened to 54 minutes of a Joe Rogan podcast, so I have an entire 6 more days to go. At the same time, I'm allowed to be angry because Joe Rogan is spreading this misinformation that makes my job and my line producer's job and Patrick's job and his line producer's job so much harder. You know, when you go to school for the first time, like in a public elementary school in America, you have to get vaccinated. You get your measles, mumps, and fucking other ones. You get vaccinated because you're in a physical environment with a bunch of other people. Joe Rogan, I'm looking at you. I'm not pleased. I'm not fucking pleased. That ends my 6-minute and 17-second rant. Poor Derek. In day 2 and day 3, I listened to his interview with Jewel and Elon Musk. Now, his interview with Jewel, I gotta be honest, I think this was my least favorite episode. And I was surprised because I love Jewel as a performer. On the day that I tried to listen to her, I might not have been in the right headspace. I only spent 45 minutes on this episode, so it most likely could have been me. I give that episode maybe a 4 out of 10. The next day, however, I listened to an episode with Elon Musk. I can't tell if it's the episode from 2017 where Elon Musk smoked a joint or a spliff on the show. It seems like maybe this was one after. The Elon Musk episode really got me riled up. First of all, I think it's commendable that he's able to attract a billionaire to his show. But that said, I'm gonna give this episode an 8 out of 10 because I kept thinking about it afterwards. Well, I will say that Joe Rogan is a very good interviewer. He's a good listener. After 3 episodes, I found that I was pretty engaged the entire time. And as a creator, I would like to know how he's been able to capture this essence. It's important, I think, because right now we are living in an attention economy. And if he's able to make his listeners into active listeners rather than passive listeners, that's an important skill. Because if you're an active participator in the content that you watch, then you are more set up to become a fan for life. Wee woo, wee woo. It's Wednesday, which means we are midway through the week. Yes, my Halloween decorations are still up. I can tell you right off the bat, I don't think the Joe Rogan Experience is my podcast vibe. There is one episode, however, that Spotify has dubbed the most shared of his recent episodes. I'll give this a listen to. It's only 2 hours and 48 minutes long. long. I'll probably only spend 45 minutes listening to this bad boy. I'm gonna roast some chickpeas with a little bit of nuts. That's my evening activity. My fourth day, I listened to the episode with Rob Kearney, who was arguably the first minority on the podcast. And by minority, I mean he's the first openly gay strongman. You could tell that Joe Rogan really respects what Rob does for a living. In this episode, I realized that Joe Rogan knows a lot about the human body. Rob Kearney's episode brought up an issue I have with Mr. Rogan's list of guests. There's not a lot of representation. Not a lot of people of color, not a lot of women. For an example, take all the scientists and the intellectuals he has. Most of them are professors from Yale and Harvard, MIT, Stanford. Great. Most of them are white men. And I know that there are tons of experts in the fields that he's interested in that are women and people of color. It would be nice if there was more diversification. The conversations get monotonous after a while. It would be nice to hear a take on the human body, for an example, from, people of color and women, because last I checked, they too have a human body. And that's why I was so surprised when I discovered the Sanjay Gupta episode. It was exactly what I was missing. Okay, update. I'm about 3 minutes in, and I just love Sanjay Gupta so much. He was like, apparently he wrote into Joe Rogan and was like, I need to be on your podcast. Joe Rogan was like, okay. They started off the podcast almost as like intellectual adversaries, a little bit. That was the energy, that was the vibe. This is the first time I've ever heard him open a podcast by asking the guests, why are you here? So I'm intrigued. Joe Rogan quoted the study. He was like, isn't the COVID vaccine bad for young boys? Because they're talking about the COVID vaccine for children. And Sanjay Gupta goes, that's not true.
Straight up.
He's like, no, he's just like, actually, I hear that, and no. Pat.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a strange proposal for you.
Oh, indecent proposal?
No, that comes later. I'm listening to a really interesting episode, and I think that you might appreciate it. And I know we were slated to watch The Foundation, but do you mind if we continue to watch and listen to this episode?
I am down to give it a try. I can't promise I'm going to stick to the end.
No, I'm not either. I'm not going to stick to the end either because it's 3 hours long. I'm glad that you're down. This is the first Joe Rogan podcast where I'm like, yeah, we should continue listening. This is the thing that gets me so mad!
I'm not angry watching it.
You're not?
Illuminating to hear certain opinions that don't get expressed in my social circles. Articulated the way that he articulates them, the nature of the format, the fact that he has somebody to call up studies and prep her point is somewhat uneven, as are most shows of this nature, and so there's logical fallacies that keep coming up that aren't being addressed.
Right.
A lot of false equivalency.
I seriously can't believe that I'm returning to this podcast episode, but I find Dr. Sanjay Gupta going head to head with Joe Rogan so cool. The fact that these two can drink whiskey and discuss their opposing viewpoints in a respectful way, I appreciate that. And I am coming back to this episode because I want to finish it. This may be the only episode of the Joe Rogan Experience that I listen to in completion. Mr. Rogan, if I can call you that. Could I be so bold as to request more women and people of color on your podcast? Because the Sanjay Gupta episode really highlighted that fact that you're not used to having a lot of different kinds of voices. It's like comedians, fighters, white intellectuals. Rinse, repeat. One thing I do like about Joe, if I can call you that, is that you, Mr. Rogan, have a lust for life and you're very optimistic. I love that. And I appreciate that because your demographic skews male. And I think it's so easy to be a very pessimistic male voice in 2021. But there's so much that we can learn from other people who have dissenting opinions. And I noticed with the Sanjay Gupta episode that Joe was very quick to become a bully. He was grilling Dr. Gupta about certain things and then would just become a bully out of nowhere. And I understand that's probably like an old personal tendency. I've noticed to reach across the other side, we have to have empathy and we have to listen. It would be a nice challenge, I think, to have people on who he may not look like or may not agree with, to have them on and to truly listen to them and not be a bully. Now's the point of the video where I do a little research as to like who Joe Rogan actually is, his history, his personal life, and his career. And what I didn't know about him is that Joe Rogan has been around in Hollywood for years. Like I knew that he was on Fear Factor, but I didn't know that he used to be on a sitcom in the 90s where he played a man named Joe. I realized that a crux of his personal brand is admitting that he's wrong. He does do that a lot. He often says like, don't listen to me. And I think that's a little bit of his comedian side coming out. At this point, Joe Rogan is less of a comedian and more of an influencer. He would hate it if I said that, but he is influencing the way people think. Here's some things I didn't know about Joe Rogan. I didn't know that he used to be a dick in Hollywood circles. I didn't know that he used to be, that he used to be a dick. And by dick, I mean that he used to get into fights at the comedy clubs that he used to perform at, and he used to get in fights with contestants at Fear Factor. And I read in an article that there are two types of Joe Rogans. There's the Joe Rogan that was of the early noughts and 90s, and then there's the Joe Rogan that discovered cannabis and had daughters. I'm someone who uses weed as a way to turn the intensity down in my life. That resonates with me. And admittedly, there's a comedian friend who I saw that was quoted that he chilled out a lot after he had his daughters. And it's gonna be interesting how he sees the world once they start becoming sexualized. There, I said it. It's real. It's fucking real. And likewise, I'm sure there are so many other character flaws that I can find of Joe Rogan's on the internet. Also, I think there's probably a lot of redeemable sound bites I can find in his discography. But my goal was never to become a Joe Rogan expert. My goal was to give the man a chance and to spend some brain time on someone I would never usually seek out. Do I think his podcast is dangerous? No. I don't think it's dangerous. I don't think it's radicalizing, like I think a lot of people might have you believe. However, this is my brain, and I can see how someone who is maybe looking to identify himself as a masculine person can really sink their teeth into the Joe Rogan experience. I think anybody can become radicalized if they devote their entire life to listening to one type of content. So radicalizing maybe, dangerous, I don't think so. Will I keep listening? No. Sorry, probably not. Probably not. If he diversifies his roster of guests, yeah, I'll definitely give him a listen again, because I think he's a really good interviewer. That is a skill that not a lot of people have. I really liked the fact that I had an active listening experience to him. What did I learn about this experience, you guys? There are two wolves inside of me. The incendiary bitch who just wants to provoke, and the people pleaser. So I went into this experience really trying hard not to be incendiary and to really try hard to give the fans of the Joe Rogan experience a chance. I think it's really easy in this day and age to choose a side. I find myself instinctually doing that all the time, especially if you're really online. It's really easy to be like, that person's stupid, he's an idiot, that person's an expert, I like them. It's really, really easy to do that. And I have also been on the receiving end of shame a lot in my life, and I just don't think that you're ever going to change someone's mind by shaming them. So I really wanted to give this new side of content that I'd never really been exposed to a chance. I'm glad I did, because I found a lot of nuance there. There's a lot of stuff that I agreed with on the Joe Rogan podcast. What do you think about the Joe Rogan experience? Have you ever listened to an episode of his? Have you ever had an encounter with one of his super fans? Tell me about it in the comments below. And this goes without saying, I want this space in Devin But Better to be as respectful as it can be. If you are a Joe Rogan fan and feel threatened, talk to me about what I missed in the comments below. Please do so respectfully. Also, if you are not a fan and you have feelings that I did this video, tell me respectfully in the comments below. I don't want anyone to fight with each other. I just want us to have a place where we can talk about things that are important to us in a respectful way. And again, thank you, you beautiful nerds, for spending your time with me. It means a lot. I love y'all, and I'll see you next week.